introducing the last speaker of this session from France, the French peace movement, Mouvement la paix, Alain Rouy.
Thank you. I want to speak from the US military bases in France, because in France we have no US military bases since 1966, when General de Gaulle withdrew from the integrated command of the NATO by refusing to allow the USA to vassalize French policy. He said, allies, yes, but vassals, never. Today, this slogan is still highly pertinent, I think. It's in fact one of the primary impacts of the bases to keep the countries within the sphere of hegemony by pretending to ensure their defense and security. NATO is seen as indispensable, and leaving NATO is seen as a disaster. We must campaign against these ideas. But while France has no foreign military bases on its soil, it does have military bases abroad, in Africa, Djibouti, Senegal, Ivory Coast, and Gabon, and in Abu Dhabi. France has also a military presence all over the world, thanks to its overseas territories in the Caribbean, Martinique, Guadeloupe, French Guiana, in the Indian Ocean, Mayotte and La Réunion, 2 islands, and in the Pacific with New Caledonia and French Polynesia Islands. In Africa, defense agreements are the legal justification for the French military presence. But in reality, it's a matter of defending the economic interests of the former colonial power and continuing to exploit the resources of these countries. In the overseas territories, it's another thing. The military presence is in no way benefits local development. On the contrary, it has particularly negative consequences for the environment. It's also a threat to local population fighting for their independence, as in New Caledonia or in Polynesia. These two regions are territories to decolonize following the principles. One of France's major responsibilities concerns the environmental impact of its military and its nuclear activities. The most important issue remains that of the 17 French nuclear tests in Algeria between 1906 and 1967, including 9 tests after the independence of Algeria in 1962. The pollution caused by these tests also affects the inhabitants of the Pacific Islands of French Polynesia. There were 46 atmospheric tests and 147 underground tests between 1966 and 1996. And these tests, more than 200, will have incalculable consequences for the environment of this island, but also for the public health, for the health of the population. The Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, the last treaty, TPNW, which Algeria ratified, but not France, This treaty gives victims new legal means to seek compensation. And it's one of our campaigns that our overseas territories, they can have compensation for this period of tests, of nuclear tests in the Pacific. But beyond nuclear weapons, much remains to be done to identify all the other pollution caused by France's military bases all over Africa and armed interventions overseas and abroad. In France, the forces for peace and progress are opposed to the militarization of international relations, and they are working for a radically different direction for French policy in the world. First and foremost, they are calling for France to stop behaving like an imperialist power in Africa. But it begins now, but not because of France, because of the countries that they don't want military presence, like Mali, like Burkina Faso, like Mauritania, and so on. But in concrete terms, it means that we want that France close bases and withdraws the French army, and that we stop military intervention and all intervention in former colonies. The peace movement is also calling for the closure of the base in the United Arab Emirates in Abu Dhabi, and an end to arms sale and military cooperation with repressive regimes such as those in Saudi Arabia or in Turkey. More generally, it's time to put an end in France to the anomaly of democracy, which makes the head of state, the French president, the head of the armed forces and responsible for military operation undertaken by France under his exclusive responsibility. The parliamentary approval is required only after 6 months. Yes? The president can decide what he wants. That's the French democracy. That's to say, as last word, that the militarist ideology, the militarization, is a threat for the own people and not only for the other people. Thank you.
Merci, Moulem.